How about Bozeman, man? You happy up there?
Yeah, Bozeman's cool. It's very hip. Everybody's into being in Bozeman, which has made our housing prices out of control.
Well, dude, that's happening all over the country. I mean, and
Yeah, I
probably
mean, I
in Des
moved
Moines,
here.
Iowa, it's the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy, but it's a great community. I feel like I mean, I've been here almost about 2.5 years now, and I don't know, like I first moved here and I was so stressed by school because I'd never really gone to school before like
Yes.
that. And so I was super overwhelmed. I like didn't really meet people. Also, I was hurt. I couldn't run. And then like
And then
4 months
COVID.
after we moved here, COVID happened.
It's exact same with us. Yeah.
We couldn't meet anybody. But it's like I have made friends still. And it's like I know
Yeah.
Mike Wolfe, he was like my one guy I knew here.
Legend.
And I've just
He got into Hardrock too, man. Did you guys celebrate?
I know there's actually three of us from Bozeman.
Really? Awesome.
Yeah.
I miss Mike Wolfe, man. Next time you see him, give him a hug for me. Tell him I say hello.
He's super funny. I don't see him often, but usually it's like for a 48-hour effort.
Yeah, I heard he's crushing it with his gym and stuff. I heard he's sort of a pillar of the community.
I think so. Yeah. I can't speak to how financially solvent it is because I think it's a tough market, a tough business to run, but
especially through COVID.
It's a super cool gym. They do an awesome job. I go there a lot and I think it really helps. And they own the space next door. So they're now building this like bouldering gym in there too. So and you're right. He is like a community figure. He puts a lot of events together.
Dude, this is great. We're going to just leave this stuff in. Let's get started here because, Mike Wolfe is actually I don't know. He seems like he was maybe a sort of an important figure in your career too. I'm thinking back to, what was it, 2009, 2010, when you guys had that battle at TNF 50?
I think that was 2011.
2011.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know he was in some ways influential in those early days of your career. And now you guys are neighbors there in Bozeman, Montana, and you both got into Hardrock this year. So any words about Mike Wolfe you want to share with the audience? A legend of our era of the sport.
I mean, I feel like ultra running is like the least extreme thing he's ever done, But like, I mean, from that battle, when I raced with him, I mean, Jesus, 10 years ago, oh my God. It was like, we were neck and neck for the whole race, but I like very much remember coming around a corner once and we were like halfway through and Mike was behind me and Alex Nichols was in front and Alex like twisted his ankle and I was kind of helping him. And then Mike showed up and we're kind of helping Alex and Alex was like, you guys go.
Oh yeah. There's that iconic photo of you guys sort of like helping Alex Nichols down the trail.
Well, I was like helping him. And then Alex is like, guys, you need to keep going. I'm done. You go. And we're like, okay. And I like, look at Mike, like, are you ready to go? And he's bleeding out of his forehead.
Iconic
like, with blood
photo
all down his face. And I'm like, Jesus, what happened to you? And there'd been like a log over the tree or over the trail. And he like didn't duck enough and just smashed his face into the log. And then he proceeded to beat me. And there's like these great photos of him and I'm like right behind him. We're working so hard and he's bleeding down one side of his face and the other side's like salt. It's awesome.
But that was kind of an interesting moment in the sport too, because it was kind of when the races were really becoming very competitive. Like you guys were only separated by a couple of minutes at the finish line. And this was sort of like the advent of YouTube also, because then there was the video that came out a short time later.
They did have those videos every year.
And that's, I think, the YouTubeification of the sport has been one of the major contributors to its exponential growth. And you and Mike Wolfe were part of that. It's funny too, because I mean, I remember he was, he had gone to law school and was like working on, I think he was like working for a federal prosecutor or something up there in Montana.
A federal prosecutor job in Helena. Like, it sounds intense.
But he fully was like, this isn't what I was meant to do, and sort of scrapped his law career to pursue his passion, open a gym in his hometown of Bozeman, Montana. And yes, he's sort of retired from like trying to be a professional athlete, I think. But, it's so good to see him get pulled at Hardrock and still.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, he's as strong as ever. He just doesn't want to be in the scene too much.
Yeah. He's always kind of had that personality to him too. But
For sure.
Great guy. Anyway, Dakota Jones, it's so good to have you on the podcast, man.
Well, thanks so much, man. I'm flattered. Like this podcast is the real deal. I mean, you've been making waves with this thing. It's really cool to see what you've done.
Thanks so much, man. Yeah. And I'm one of your biggest fans going back years and years and years. Even though I'm 5 years older than you, I feel like I've always kind of looked up to you as an athlete and as a,
no way.
As a human being. And I feel like we have a million things to talk about outside of Mike Wolfe.
We haven't caught up in years.
Yeah. And you and I kind of both came up in the same generation of the sport, and we were both kind of the youngsters or a part of a cohort of youngsters in that era. And I actually remember the first time you coming into my awareness, I think, was at the Fruit of 50 back in 2010. In Western Colorado. I think you were like 19 at the time. And
did you do your homework, or do you actually remember?
No, I went back and just like double checked everything, but I'm pretty sure you were 19 at the time, but I do remember it pretty vividly because I mean, you kicked my ass. You beat Nick Clark and Ryan Birch, who were two of the best guys in Colorado at that time. And you're like this youngster, and I was like 24 at the time, still feeling like an up and comer, and you beat me by an hour. I was like, who is this kid, this teenager? Anyway, I've been a big fan ever since, and we've got a lot to talk about, including, Hardrock, getting into Hardrock last week, the film that's going to be released this weekend, and our new partnership together between Free Trail and Footprints. So it's super, super good to have you on, man. And, we're coming up on the end of 2021 and that therefore the beginning of 2022. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Good conclusion. Yes.
Do you have any idea where I'm leading you? The fact that we're coming up on 2022?
Is this something about how I've been doing this for like 15 years now? And I used to be young.
Dude, it's like we're dangerously close to the 10-year anniversary of 2012, right? Which was a pretty, I think, huge year for you.
Yeah, I'm still riding that.
I feel
it's like embarrassing. I go to Spain and they're like, Dakota Jones. And I'm like, that was a long time ago, guys. Get over it.
Well, let's start here, man. It's, it was 10 years ago that you had a very powerful year in 2012 that includes Transvolcania, which is what you're referencing with your popularity and fame in the country of Spain. How did that year impact your athletic career? Because you were like 21 at the time. I can't remember if this is sort of before you had dropped out of college or not. But
no, it was like right after. It was this tremendous validation of my life choices. I was like, I did it. I can run a race. But it was great because at the end of 2011, like I'd been racing a ton from mostly 2010 and 2011. And I had finally, at the end of 2011, signed this 3-year contract with Montreal Mountain Hardware. And it was like, finally, I mean, it wasn't, I'm not going to buy a house. Like we don't make a lot of money in the sport,
sure.
But for me, finally, I was like, well, if I live in my truck, I can like live off this, like this and Cliff Bar. And like, I can make this for real. And I was in college at Colorado State just because I was like, what else do you do after high school? I don't know.
Yep.
And so, at the end of 2011, I was like, I'm just paying money there's no reason for me to be here. So,
what was it about that first college experience where you didn't really feel at home on campus? Or was it just that you wanted to pursue professional sport?
I mean, it was it was kind of both. Like I wasn't really into what I was studying. I was like, I'll study English because I like to read and write. But then I was like, I don't know, man, I could read and write the way I want to without spending $5,000 a semester, And so it was really cool. I remember like my parents were pretty supportive because I was like, hey, like I'm not failing. This isn't really worth it. And what I want to do is race. And so, and I also like, I could support myself. So they didn't have to like it didn't matter what they thought really, but I want them to support me.
Sure.
But I mean, when I was in school, I mean, I had a good time. I had friends for sure, but I also, it's like every weekend I didn't go out. I like go to Boulder and run with like Tony and Joe and Scott.
You did take a mature approach to it. Like you did take it seriously like with the approach of a
Sometimes I think
professional
back and I'm
athlete.
like, boy, it would have been cool to like go to frat parties because I don't know
Well,
what
that's what I
like.
mean. Given the fact that you were 19 or 20 years old at the time, like it felt like you did approach it in a professional way. And then, as you mentioned, 2012, this was a huge validation of your life's decision to drop out of college and pursue professional sport. You won Lake Sonoma, then you won Transvolcania, probably one of the handful of people ever to beat Killian in a race. And, then you did Hardrock for, I think it was the second time that year. So talk about that year in particular. Maybe is there any through lines that you see from then to sort of where you are now in your career?
Yeah, I mean, 2012 was definitely a big year for me because I got invited to do this big trip to Europe with like the whole skyrunning crew. They invited like 50 people, 50 elite athletes from around the world. It was crazy. And then we show up in La Palma in the Canary Islands for this Transvolcania. It's like 75K. I didn't really know much about it. And we show up like Thursday afternoon and the race is Saturday morning. And so, we slept like 12 hours the first night, not at all the second. And then we just start racing. And I mean, it was as much a surprise to me as anybody else that I won. I remember like coming down the finishing chute, like, are you for real? Really? I did it. And it was amazing. But I remember also like being kind of discomfited by it. Like they give you a lot of attention if you win races. And obviously I put myself in that position. Like I trained hard and ran a race where it's like, I know that if you win, you get attention, but it has always made me super uncomfortable because it's like people treat you like you're some freaking superhero. And I'm like, no, I just ran this like really arbitrary distance really hard. And it's cool. And I'm proud of it, but I'm not better than anybody. And I remember just being like, really like after I won Transvolcania, they were like, hey, do you want some quiet time? And the race organizer took me to this hotel room with Iker Carrera. And we like sat in this hotel room together for like an hour, just in the dark. And I was like, I gotta go. And I like walked around town for like an hour, like after the race and just kind of like watching the race finish from kind of behind the scenes and just being like, this is a weird situation. Like, how am I involved in this? And
dude, this is interesting because I don't know, you've always struck me as sort of like this independent, idealistic person and also like sort of a contrarian. And it's just this sort of feels that it's sort of a feeling that, at least perception of you in the way that you're talking about this and the fact that you didn't necessarily feel comfortable in the spotlight, as it were, after winning this race. Am I touching on something there that's accurate?
I don't know. I think that it's a bit hypocritical too. I put myself in that situation. I knew it was going to be there. And like anybody else, I love it when everybody's like, oh, you're so great. That always feels good. And winning races, you get that. But I don't know. It's just, I feel like trail running for me has always been something that I want to do for the sake of the experience, for the sake of the movements and the sports. And like it's always been important to me that I remember that what's really valuable about this is the activity and the places we do it and the people I do it with. And I think that in terms of like being uncomfortable in the spotlight, it's like, I don't know. I think part of me is afraid that I'm going to seek that out and do the sport because of that, not because of like the value that's inherent in the sport. I don't want to lose those values.
Yeah. Do you think of yourself as like a super independent, almost contrarian person?
I feel like sometimes I don't know if contrarian, I use
the reason I say that is specifically because of Transvolcania. I mean, thinking back and remembering, because I have this weird photographic memory for shit like this, but I think I remember you wore like a race vest before that was a thing, before it was cool, right? It's 2012. You had two handhelds and everybody else went minimal, right? And you're racing against Killian and Mike Wolfe and Francois. Yeah. And you're 21, right? And you wore your vest because this is just memory, because you could stuff it filled with gels. And of course, in the European scene, at least in those days, they didn't really have gels at aid stations. And so you took this sort of contrarian approach that ended up being like the mature, right thing to do at the ripe young age of 21 years old. And you won the race, maybe as a result of that. That's what I mean by independent thinking and contrarian, because this was sort of the height of the minimalist running era, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. That was definitely when Born to Run was hot. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I didn't go out there and look around at everybody else and think like, oh, well, I'm going to do it different than them no matter what. But I knew, and I found this to be true throughout racing is like, especially early in the race when everybody's getting after it, if you can run through an aid station and put time on people there, it can like mess with their heads. You can get a big, like sort of emotional advantage, whether or not you're that far ahead. Right. And so especially, I mean, I don't think I took any food. I took all the food I needed for that race from the start, which was a bit excessive. You don't need to do that, but
how smart.
It allowed me to run through the aid stations, or just at the very least, just stop for water and keep going. And so,
but I mean, it was somewhat of a brilliant move at 21 years old when everybody else was trying to go as light and fast as possible. And you have 2 handhelds and a backpack filled with all the gels you need throughout the entire race. Anyway, fun to reminisce about that. And I think it was obviously a really important moment in your career, but also I think kind of an important moment for American trail running too, because of course, you're just this up and coming superstar, super young, and you go onto, the European home turf and beat Kilian, the king of his day and still the king of the sport. And Francois was in the race that day too, I think.
I know, that's where I met him, I think.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure it was just like a powerful moment in your career, and a big validation of the trajectory you were on and dropping out of school and pursuing this full time.
Yeah. I mean, I felt super lucky, man. And it's just so nice, like getting to do this as a job, like that's what I wanted. I was like, I want to compete at the highest level. I want to do the best that I can. And like having that opportunity to race in Europe was like wonderful in itself. And then like being able to win the race was,
it was awesome. What an awesome race.
And then running Hardrock that year. I came back and ran Hardrock, and that was fun because, I remember being like, it was awesome because I finished Hardrock and I ran an hour and a half faster than I had the previous year, but I also finished 1 place lower because Joe Grant and Hal Corner beat me.
Yep.
But it was really cool.
And now you get your chance again in 2022. We'll get around to talking about that, but you also make me want to ask you about, I mean, you just said like you wanted to compete at the highest level, and you've always also struck me as like a very intensely competitive person who's like,
bad.
No, not at all, man. I don't mean that in a bad way at all. What I mean by it is like, I feel like you're hard on yourself. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of athletes are, right?
Yeah. Where do you feel like, that's sort of been with you your whole life? Where does that come from?
I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know. Maybe those things aren't really for me to decide.
Yeah.
It's like I'm too close to it. It's hard to know.
Well, so as an example, I recall, I can't remember if you wrote an article or somebody wrote it about you, where you talked about how like at some point in your career, you had to like unfollow Kilian because you were sort of bummed out about, maybe you were dealing with an injury at the time, and obviously Kilian was winning every single race there was, and you wanted to sort of be at that level, right? And of course, acknowledging that Kilian is fundamentally a good person and you have a lot of respect for him, but that there was a part of you that felt that it was necessary to like, don't show me Kilian's content because I'm not at that level and I want to be at that level. That's what I mean by being hard on yourself.
Yeah. I mean, we all hold ourselves to a high standard, and especially like I've dealt with a lot of injuries over a few years, and it's just, it's tough to feel like you're not accomplishing what you wanted to, or what you like, you get in your head like, oh, I could have done this if I had done this other thing differently and I blew it. And, it's not the way my mind's always thinking, but especially when you're injured, you can't exercise, you can't like train. It's easy to get in your own head about that stuff.
Do you feel like you've outgrown it a little bit now in your 30s? It's crazy. Dakota Jones, the kid who's always the youngest guy out there. He's in his 30s now.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've outgrown that a little bit? Like, are you more at peace with where you are And
yeah, I mean, it's not perfect.
yeah,
I definitely still want to compete, and I don't think I have much, or at least not very well in a while, partly because of COVID. But I don't know. There's like I'm in school now. I'm in engineering school. I came back. I've done 5 semesters now, and that was like a big thing to come to terms with, because it's like, oh, here I am going from being like the young hot guy in the trail running scene to like, not the hot guy, you know.
I know what you mean.
That came out wrong. But you know, it's like going from being like the fast young guy in the trail running scene to being like the old dude who's an undergrad with these kids who are 10 years younger than me.
Yeah.
And they're all like, they were in high school like a week and a half ago. So they're already good at algebra. And I don't know I haven't done math in 12 years. And I've come to terms with that too, you know, but it definitely makes me feel like, oh, there's a part of me that's like, did I ruin my chance as a trail runner? And now I'm like, this is my backup plan. Because some people treat it that way. Like my grandma, she's like, I'm glad you're finally gonna get a job. I'm just like, that's not why I'm here, grandma. Stop it. But I don't know. I definitely feel comfortable with my place in the sport now. I think that I can still compete at a high level. I want to run hard, but also like, I'm a good athlete, but I will never be a great athlete. I'm not Killian.
Come on, dude.
No, but seriously, it's like, I'm not going to compete at that level, because it's like, there's too many other things that I've got going on. Like I'm going to school, I'm organizing these camps. Like I just can't race enough. And I don't think I can put enough of myself into racing and competing and training to be like the great, like legendary style athlete like Killian is.
Dude, that's interesting.
And like, it was like a part of me, like years ago, I like came to terms with that. I was like, what's important here? Like if I get to being 65 and I look back at what I've done, like, is winning every race going to be the most important, or is it going to be something else? And well, since I couldn't win every race, I was like, it's better be something else.
Well, dude, there's no question that when you're on, you're one of the best our sport has ever seen. Certainly one of the best Americans. And your resume proves that out. You have dealt with long bouts of injury and tough years, maybe more so than, well, certainly probably more so than me. But you're absolutely much more talented than I am. And I'm curious, you know, like as somebody who has been a pro athlete for like half of your life, it's kind of crazy. What have you learned from those down years, or from those experiences of injury or of underperformance that have maybe helped you to become this mature undergraduate at 31 now?
31-year-old undergrad. Yeah, I'm very mature. That's it. I think that I didn't like really learn from my mistakes. I kept like thinking that I needed to train hard a lot. And it's such a stupid but common thing to be like a young man in a competitive sport, and to be like, more is always better. And it's not, it's like often way worse. But it's like I get over an injury and then go out and like get fit again. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm feeling good. You know, maybe have a good race and be like, okay, well, this next race is a big deal, so I'm going to train 150 miles a week or something. And then just like get hurt again, and like, or just get lazy and not do the PT that I need to, or I don't know. And like a big part of what I think defines my career up to this point is like, I raced really hard and was completely committed until like maybe the end of 2014. And then I started to like have some questions about like, if this is enough for me. And I like definitely dialed it back, because I wasn't sure if this is worth my time and my energy. And I struggled with that for a long time.
Talk about that, because that's really interesting, man, because you're 24 or 25 at that time.
Yeah.
And
it would like definitely happen like at a UTMB. It kind of came to a head. I'd been thinking about it a lot, but then I was like running UTMB and I didn't have a great race, but whatever, you know, I was running it. I got to Champay-Lac at like 75 miles and I felt bad, but eventually was like, okay, I'll just go walk it in, whatever. And I got like a mile out of there and I was like, I don't want to be here. Like, I'm not interested in this. And I like I felt like super guilty, because I have this free trip to the most beautiful place in the world to do this ridiculous thing. It's like the privilege is overwhelming. And so I feel guilty about like giving up on that. But I was like, you know what? I'm spending all of my time, all of my energy. I'm making sacrifices and asking all the people I love around me to make sacrifices. And like, what is it really for? Even if I did have the best race of my life, like, what is this really like doing some good? Like, I'm looking at these glaciers and I'm like, these glaciers are definitely not getting any bigger because I'm having a racing career.
Yeah.
And like environmental issues have always been a big concern for mine. And I'm just like, is it really worth it to spend my life working this hard to make like myself 0.5% better per race or less, you know, because those margins at the highest level are smaller and smaller, which is the way it works. And that's fine.
So was that
like, I don't
point-
want to take that away from somebody else, but I kind of came to the realization that like, I need some greater purpose here.
Dude, that's pretty profound, man. So in 2014, you sort of come to this realization that being a pro athlete isn't enough for you. How did you then kind of take steps to fill that void? Was that when the maybe voices started coming back in your brain about going back to school or doing some of the activism stuff?
Yeah, it wasn't really school for a while. Honestly, I think
you struggled with it for a while though, it sounds like.
I think I struggled with it and like didn't deal with it.
Yeah.
That was right when I signed with Solomon, and I'd like doubled down. I was like, okay, I'm going to continue racing all the time and doing this. And because it's like this great opportunity to run for Solomon, I get to be on the big, like that's the team, you know, like all the Europeans, all the best athletes that we follow, they're Solomon runners. This is my big chance to not screw it up and to like get to reach that next level. And so I trained just too much. I like overdid it. And I got a stress fracture in 2015 and like, I was like, oh, I can't really do much, but I don't know if it's a stress fracture. It took me out. Like I wasn't able to do any racing for real for a year.
Yeah.
And then I had a good summer in 2016, but like, I wasn't really doing much difference, but I was like thinking about this all the time. Like, how can I make this about more than me? I was trying to figure this out. And especially like in 2016, I went to Europe for the advanced week and I was supposed to run races. I still had this stress fracture, but I took a cargo ship. I was like, I don't want to fly.
I remember this.
Yeah. I was like, I don't want to fly. And I looked up all these different ways to like save energy or to like get to Europe without flying. And cargo ship's a thing, which in like the world of sustainable travel, it's
like a container ship, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Technically, it was actually a true cargo ship. There were cranes on it. There weren't really any containers.
Okay.
This is a distinction that doesn't matter to most people.
This is what I kind of mean by you always being this kind of like idealistic contrarian who's like rigidly true to your values in a good way. You know, I don't mean that as like a, some sort of personality flaw.
It's kind of a test, you know, like how true to your values can you really be? And I mean, in the environmental world, it's really hard because if your values are about having no negative impact on the world, then you're going to watch yourself constantly contravening your own values. Because there's no other way to live in this world than using resources. And the world that's been set up for us is like entirely built on fossil fuels. And that's like a big part of the work we're doing with POW to like systemically change these systems. But it's hard. And we've inherited a world that damages the world. And so we need to work on that. And it's like really hard to come to terms with that and to like recognize that you're not a bad person because you drive a car. You're not a bad person because you fly in airplanes or like eat meat, whatever. Like it's much bigger than that.
Yeah.
But anyway, like as I was starting to get into like trying to reduce my own impact and be an environmental advocate, the first thing that I think a lot of people think of is like, how do I reduce my own impact? I know now that reducing your own impact doesn't mean a damn thing. What matters is collective action. And the best thing you can do, as Bill McKibben says, is to not be an individual. Stop being an individual, start taking collective action. But I've learned a lot about this.
Wow. I'm just drawing the line straight to footprints, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Collective action.
But so that first year in 2016, I was like, I'm going to go to Europe. I'll take a cargo ship. It'll be sweet. It was not super sweet.
How long of a trip is that? Cool, how long does that take?
I mean, it didn't have to take 17 days, but it did. I remember like you have to sign a thing on the cargo ship that says like, I understand that I'm not the priority. And they know that I'm getting on at one spot and getting off in another. But it's like, what happens in between? It could be many things. And like, we were supposed to go from Philadelphia to France. And I like we left in the nighttime, and then I went to bed, and I got up in the morning and I went out on the deck, and I was like, that's funny. The sun is to my left. Shouldn't it be like ahead of us?
You guys went off course, huh?
What happened is they had some cargo to pick up in North Carolina, which was like a last minute thing. So we went from Philadelphia to North Carolina, and then we sat in the bay, but offshore for 4 days. And I'm like pedaling my bike on the train.
You're like, is environmentalism really this important to me? But yeah. No, man, I think I think it speaks volumes to your character that you do have these values and that you believe in them and that you take action and that you are vocal in your, sort of support of what you believe in. And I'm curious also, like, and now, like, at this point in your career, in your 30s as a mature person, you're actually really making steps to make a difference in a way that's probably more of a labor of love than anything else, right? It's not something that you have a huge financial incentive to do. Things like doing work with POW and your footprints, running camp. Have you noticed, going back to this conversation of just being a pro athlete and your feeling of like that not being enough for you, have you noticed that potentially like it's supported you as an athlete as you've added these other things that have kind of supported your intellectual life and these things, these causes that you really believe in?
Yeah. Like the community or like the sport itself.
Yeah. And like, has it helped you as an athlete one of the things, I guess what I'm getting at is I always feel that having external interests outside of sport make it much easier to deal with the downtimes. Like when you got your stress fractures and you were simply a pro athlete and you didn't have work with POW and you didn't have the footprints camp. Right. Like, have you noticed that as you've spent more time dedicating yourself to these other things that it has maybe buoyed your life as an athlete? Like, have you been able to stay healthier because of the fact that you're not so wrapped up in this athletic identity?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I never wanted to like disavow the trail running scene or something. And actually that's something that I really like about what you're doing with Free Trail is like, you're really bringing this community together and you're supporting what makes trail running like different from other sports. We're not track and field. We're not cycling or triathlon. And those are super cool sports. I like following them. But like in trail running, we definitely have a unique sense of like value on community and experience. That's like a major part of it. It's like at least as much a part of our sports culture as like competition. Mm-hmm. And I love that. And so like what you're doing is super, super cool. And like, I've always loved our trail running community and I've gotten so much value out of that. Like my best friends are my trail running people, you know? And so I didn't want to like give up on that. But I was also like, maybe I don't know. I felt selfish in a lot of ways. And so really what I've come to do is like, well, what's good about trail running? And I'm like, it's being out in the mountains. It's working hard. It's these people that support us. It's the community. It's the miles that we share with our friends. It's the new friends we make. Like all of this inspiring stuff. It centers on the community. And, that's something that we can use for a larger purpose.
Yeah.
So trail running is often what we say. We're like, oh, if you want to protect your trails from climate change, then get involved with this action or something. And really, like, we all know that trail running is not the biggest loss we'll have if climate change continues unchecked. But it is like
in fact, it'll probably benefit, right? Because all the trails that are under snow most of the year are going to be accessible to trail running.
And on fire.
Yeah, that's a good point. So,
but
well, yeah, the reason I was just going to say, the reason I ask is because I think that, you and I sort of coming up in the era that we did, and you actually making a go of it as like a full-time pro athlete and not feeling like it was enough for you. I just want to, as the sport continues to grow and evolve and mature, to make sure those who come behind us also feel that similar obligation, not only to the sport and to carry the values, but to not necessarily get so wrapped up in just being the athlete, right? And have something else that they can sort of hang their hat on or attach their personal identity to beyond just standing on a podium, which I think you and I both learned the hard way.
Yeah. And it's like, that's something that I see as like an opportunity for us is if I talk to young athletes and they want to get into this, they want to be competitive, I'm psyched because competition's awesome. I don't want to take away from that. I want to keep competing, but I also think that we can do more and we can use like the shared passion for larger purposes. And it is a big part of our culture. And so we can like build this community, this culture around making yourself more than just an athlete. And that I think really sets our sport apart. And also consumers, like every brand knows that consumers in the outdoor world are majority like very value driven in the purchases they make. Yep. And it's very much in the best interest of most brands to have a big sustainability or social justice component. And the most cynical ones just say the words and hope for the best. But then there's other brands which really like dive in and like do the hard work and like accept the criticism if they need it. And like they really put it together. And, for young athletes, if you're trying to get sponsored, really being an athlete isn't enough. I can see a lot of brands now that like expect their athletes to be like community leaders or to have some larger organization or projects that they're working on. And that just makes them more marketable for the brands. So yeah, good for everybody.
Yeah, it's brilliant, man. Very well said. So going back to your education, you spent most of your life in Moab and Durango. You made a go of college back at Colorado State many years ago. And now you live in Bozeman, Montana, attending Montana State University. Tell us how you ended up there and sort of what you're studying and how it sort of fits in with your personal values.
Yeah, it's I went to high school in Durango and basically lived there, Southwest Colorado, ever since. I did go to school at Fort Collins for a few years, but Durango's been home base since forever. But yeah, like starting in 2016 with the Progress Ship, I like started to take these actions and try to become like more, just like a better environmental advocate on my own, but also like putting myself out there and use what position I have within the sport to promote good. And that really started with Protect Our Winters. I started working with them in 2017. And I'm pretty sure I was like one of their first non-snow sports athletes. But that has rapidly changed. Now they're as much non-snow sports as they are snow sports. And I mean, working with POW has been this huge educational process about like how to really like use your community for good, how to make a difference, like what environmental action really looks like. And learning about it. I mean, there's so many smart people involved. They have people who are experts at policy. They have incredible organizational experts. They work with some of the most incredible athletes in the world. Yeah. Like I remember when I got to go lobby with them in DC once, and there was like this weird thing. There's like a huge line out the front door to get into these buildings where we were supposed to lobby, but there's like a back door for people who work in the building. And somebody knew somebody, and we like went to the back door. And the way we got in was like by two snowboarders showing their Olympic gold medals to the security guards. And they like let everybody, I mean, we had to go through security, but still it was like, that was our key.
Yeah.
So I've been able to meet these amazing people.
I love the message that POW, or the emphasis they place on the messaging of the outdoor state. I think it's a brilliant psychological tool to use in lobbying, as you describe, to, I guess, characterize our community, that being the outdoor sport community, as basically being a state in itself, because we carry so many people, a large population in the United States, and also a lot of purchasing power. And that if we mobilize as a state would, right, if we were the state of Colorado or something like that, then we would be a powerful block of voters, and we are a powerful block of voters. And when we mobilize together, there's a lot of difference that we can make in the world.
Right. Yeah. And that's POW's thing, is action in the political sphere primarily. They do a lot of different things, but they really are trying to mobilize the outdoor industry for political action for the climate. And so it's been interesting learning about that. But in addition, like I've done other projects, and most, I feel like, to the point of my process into school was in 2018, I ran the Pikes Peak Marathon. And I did it as an effort, a fundraiser for POW. I rode my bike from Silverton, Southwest Colorado, up to Colorado Springs, and I ran the race. And then I rode home.
And you won the race. You won the race. It was incredible. What a great story. Yeah. So
it was awesome.
I was there. Like, it was incredible. It was so cool.
Thanks. I mean, the point of that was to be like, what's most important to me is protecting the places I play. And, ideally we could have both, but if I have to like give up my competition in order to protect these places, then that's a worthwhile sacrifice for me.
Yeah.
But then I was able to win the race, and it was like this perfect example of being able to have like the environmental protection or resource conservation kind of gesture. It was a gesture, but still you make that gesture, but also compete. It was really cool.
It was so cool. Just a personal anecdote I'm just remembering is at the finish line, I think I asked you, so like, are you guys making a film about this or whatever? And you're like, you're just something like, no, man, like I didn't want a car following me on this trip. It would have made it completely pointless. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I asked that question.
I mean, I could have brought a camera. I know I've been bad about that.
That would totally defeat the purpose if you rode your bike from Durango to Colorado Springs and had a car follow you.
But to the point, it's like when you look at this critically, like I don't want to take away from that because it was a really cool thing. That's like probably the thing that I've done athletically that I'm most proud of. But there's also things, it wasn't perfect. I'm riding a bike made out of steel, which uses coal, and it was probably fabricated in some other country and then built somewhere else. Like my clothes come from Asia, like my food came from the grocery store, which came from who knows where.
Yeah.
It was like, it was a gesture,
and
it was better than nothing. But ultimately I was like, this isn't enough. Like I could do this for the rest of my career. And like, it's not going to make a difference. What we need to do is like scale this up. And that means either I do something that's way, way, way bigger, or I get everybody to do these small scale actions on their own. And then, basically I was like, you know what, I need to learn more. I don't know enough about this. I'm not an expert. And so I started looking around for like ways, if I'm going to get more educated, what does that look like? There's a lot of different ways to take action for the climate, for environmental issues. Law is a really good one. And the idea of being a lawyer makes me cringe, but it is really effective. Or being a scientist, that's appealing. But ultimately I ended up with mechanical engineering, because that gives me this like science and math background and like the fundamentals so that I can understand on a more technical level, like what's actually going on, which allows me, even though most of the conversations I have about environmental issues are superficial, it's fine. It gives me like this depth of knowledge to communicate more effectively. And also every now and then, maybe somebody will know what they're talking about and like criticize me, and I could like talk with them on a level, like a real level, and discuss things.
Yeah. So how does mechanical engineering tie into your environmental activism? What's the end goal? I guess I should say, what are you going to be when you grow up?
I wonder about that a lot. But I mean, my thought with that mechanical engineering was like, I could study science and understand what's going on really well, or I could study engineering and understand how we're causing the problems. Really, it's like the environmental problems are caused by humans using machines, more or less. And so since we're not going to stop using machines, I don't want, like, my message is not that you have to stop driving your car, stop flying. We don't have to stop having the modern world. We just have to do it differently. We have to do it in ways that don't create catastrophic climate change or air quality issues or waste that's overwhelming the oceans, And these seem like issues that an engineer could work on. It's very idealistic. I know I'm not going to like solve these problems, but it's like, maybe I could do one small part. I work on one issue, and then I also have the camps, and I also work with POW, and like you hit it from a lot of different angles.
Yeah, man.
And you just do the best that you can.
Well, what's clear is that like, you're really trying, right? And I don't know, this just kind of goes back to, I mean, you even use the word idealistic, and I don't know, you've just always struck me as a very idealistic person who,
thanks, man.
I guess, who's hard on yourself, but also like holds yourself accountable. And like, you get the feeling that you couldn't live with yourself if there was any hypocrisy, right? Like your internal governor or your conscience is very strong. It feels like.
So. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I make mistakes.
Well, we all do.
The wrong thing.
We all do.
I don't know. It's like, I think with environmental issues, like they're
There's
sometimes
urgency,
so
right?
overwhelming
Yeah.
that I just like don't feel like I have any hope.
Really?
And in those, I don't always feel like that,
Yeah.
but in those worst moments, I'm like, even if we fail, it's worth doing the best I can.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's not going to work, then it's like I'm still doing the right thing by trying to help.
Yeah. So on a micro level, this is just something I'm curious about. The first time you went to college, you were an English major, and those who've been around the sport for a long time know that you're incredibly skilled with the written word. And it's probably no, man, like you're a great writer and you have a great sense of humor in your writing. And it's just like, you're very skilled with it. And I could totally see you as an English major. I mean, do you find that the mechanical engineering, because typically the people who are attracted to an English major versus a mechanical engineering major, there's not much overlap in that Venn diagram. Do you find that it doesn't come as naturally to you as reading and writing?
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's a skill, like any skill, that if you work hard enough for long enough, you can pick it up. And I'm getting there, man. But it has been tough. Yeah. Like I didn't think in terms of like these analytical, quantitative terms, like ever. And I kind of pushed that stuff away in terms of this like more aesthetic, experiential kind of way of looking at the world, which is just as good. It's not like one's better than the other. But you know, going to engineering school, you definitely got to think in terms of numbers, and you have to be able to, like, one of the hardest things is like you take a physics class, especially in physics, and they're like, well, this phenomenon happens this way. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. How do you know? And they're like, well, because this equation does this. Like, if you look at the math, it just shows that. And I'm like, didn't we invent math too? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, how do these numbers translate into like proof? But they do. And that's the thing about mathematics. I'm like super into math these days. Like I want to do a lot more because I don't quite get it. And it's like this language that I'm almost there, but I can't quite. But it does prove things. It shows that it's amazing what you can do. And I also think that like, if you can communicate it, then it's actually useful. There's plenty of engineers and scientists who are brilliant, but don't know how to communicate effectively. And so they're not like getting a lot done, at least in terms of like the large picture, like what is their work going to do for other people?
Yeah.
And honestly, like I see myself kind of on this end where as an engineer, I'll be able to understand what the engineering is going on more or less. I'm not going to probably make some fancy inventions. I'm not going to like create the big inventions that are going to save the world, but I can understand them and convey them effectively.
Yeah.
With my 2 years of English major.
Written word, man.
The old written word, which everybody loves reading books, huh? That's why we're on a video podcast.
God, we're getting so old, man. We're still the old-fashioned people that read books. Well, cool, man. Well, yeah, I mean, I just really admire the fact that you had the courage to go back to school, you know, and be the old guy on campus and, you know, probably not be going to the frat parties and miss out on the real college experience that I got to enjoy when I was 18. And to have it be a values-driven thing, and to be studying something that doesn't come naturally to you because you want to make a difference. I think that's an admirable thing, man.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's not easy, but I'm sure. I mean, we all put ourselves through this sometimes, but when it's like really frustrating, I'm often just like, you know what? If I already knew how to do it, I wouldn't have to be in school. Okay, this is okay to struggle.
Yeah, good, man. Good. Struggle is good, as our sport teaches us, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about
sorry, but it's like in trail running, I feel like I'm not like that good at it ever, but I just don't stop. And then at the end of the race, sometimes I look back and I'm like, look, I'm in front. That's amazing. And I'm like hoping the best, like that's what's going to happen in engineering. I'm just like, I don't feel good at this ever, but I'm not going to stop. I'll just keep doing it.
Someday you're going to win a Nobel Prize or something.
Yeah. Or at least a good GPA. Like that's enough.
So let's talk about footprints. This is an awesome thing that you're doing, and a thing that we're now collaborating on, at least in a small way. You know, I'm hoping to help contribute. So I guess just to start this conversation, explain what footprints is for those who aren't aware, and kind of how the idea came about and what the overarching idea is.
Totally. So Footprints is a running camp that I organize where we help develop runners into leaders for environmental and social justice issues. And we do that through having a great time running, but also every camper has a project, something that they want to do to improve their own community. And we pair them up with experts in environmental science, nonprofit management, and business, all kinds of different backgrounds. We pair them up with a mentor, and they work with that person and also with the other campers and the other mentors throughout the week to hopefully go home with a project that's like a template, like here's how I'm going to do this. And the idea came about, I think technically in 2018, I went to Juneau, Alaska, because our friend Jeff Rose lives up there. And for those listeners who are maybe...
Hey, by the way, you got to, because I don't know Jeff. I mean, I know him a little bit just from back in the day, but I don't have a personal relationship with him. You need to convince him to come on my podcast. I've sent him messages and stuff. I really want to have Jeff Rose on and have an awesome conversation, but I don't think he's really into the ultra running podcast scene anymore. Anyway, pick up there. I want you to persuade him to do that for me. Yeah,
Jeff's just as cool as ever. He's so funny.
He was one of both of our biggest inspirations, I think. Absolute legend of the game. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I started running ultras, it was like 2008 or 9, and Jeff was like the guy. He was winning every ultra, every 100 especially. I met him. I remember I paced a friend at the Bear 100 in 2009, and I finished, and Jeff had just won it. And he had set a course record. And 2 weeks earlier, he had won and set a course record at the Wasatch 100. Yep. The next year, he went on and won
Western States
100, and a big, like, pivotal moment for our sport. And I looked up to him a ton, and it was really fun for me when I got sponsored. It was by Montreal Mountain Hardware, who also sponsored Jeff. And so it was really fun. Like, he definitely took me under his wing and was always super kind and supportive of me. And I was very much in awe of Jeff, and in some ways I still am, because he's such a good dude. But yeah, he doesn't really compete now. He's kind of stepped away from the sports, and I didn't really stay in touch with him, but he, for a while, was running these ultra running camps in Juneau, Alaska, where he lives. And he invited me to come up and be like the guest runner with one. And it was awesome, man. Juneau's the coolest place. Like, it's like ocean, mountain, glacier.
I've never been. I really, really want to go.
It's absolutely stunning. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And so I spent a week at the camp, and it was pretty conventional. You know, people come up to the camp and we like eat good food and go on these long runs and explore and just hang out and have a great time. It's super, super fun. Jeff does a great job. And at the end of the camp, I was like really sad. Like, I had a really good time, and I feel like I really connected with everybody at the camp. And it was really meaningful. And it felt like one more example of what I love most about the sport. It's not like just winning races. That gives us structure, but it's like being in a community with people who share these goals and interests. Like, that's really valuable.
Yeah.
And I came away from the camp like, I want to do this myself. How can I recreate this in some way without stepping on all my friends' toes? Because it seems like everybody has a camp now. And so I was like, well, I should do it with an environmental focus, right? Like, I should do this environmental camp. And then I was like, ooh, what if all the campers had their own projects that we're going to help out? You know, this is over a few days of brainstorming and thinking about it while running and stuff. And then I was like, cool, we'll teach them environmental lessons. And then I was like, oh, wait, I'm not qualified to do that. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know how to do that. And so then we came up with this idea of having educators, like, just reach out to the people, hopefully like people who are runners, but it doesn't really matter. It's people who are like, who understand the issues and understand how to take action
and are connected to the outdoor industry for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, ideally that's what happened. It's like runners who are also scientists or business leaders. And so then it just kind of morphed into this thing. I started talking to friends. Claire Gallagher helped me out a bunch at first. And I just like started reaching out to these people like, hey, do you want to come teach at this camp? If I was going to put on this camp, would you be there? And could you support me in this way? And like, this is what I would look like. And to my total astonishment, literally everybody said yes. I reached out. I was like, I'll just swing for the fences, man. I'll get like the best people ever.
They're like, is this Dakota Jones, who's really famous in Spain from the 2012 Transvagania?
People, that's how I'm known. Exactly. They're like, I went to Spain once and I heard about you. And so, no, it was amazing. Like, these incredible people. And we got 4 speakers, we call them speakers. Now they're just mentors because we had this difference between speakers and mentors, but it was a thing. So anyway, the point is like every mentor is, some of them are experts, like 4 of them have PhDs in like environmental science.
Yeah.
But also we have people who are business leaders. Jake Black from Protect Our Winters, who's like the events coordinator and programs coordinator. He gave a big presentation. We have people from different brands. We have a lot of athletes come in and be mentors, people who have like worked in the outdoor industry and know how to like pull the strings, who to talk to, how do you turn an idea into like a big project.
Mm-hmm.
And so just like by working with a lot of people, acknowledging it as this very collaborative process and trying to just maximize the impact of each person as a resource.
It's so cool.
It just really came together, and it's been, like we were able to host the first one last summer, and
after some COVID delay, probably in 2020. So are you guys still accepting applicants for this year, or 2022's Footprints Camp?
We haven't even started.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Yeah. So maybe talk about the application process and the criteria that you're looking for in case there's people who are listening who want to be involved.
Yeah, so we're going to open the applications officially on January 1st. And basically what we want you to do is talk about an issue in your community that you're concerned about, that you want to help, that you want to do something to fix. And, what that means, like in the past, we asked people to say, like, what's your project? What are you going to like present to us what you want to do for it? And really what happened at the camp is a lot of the campers ended up kind of disregarding or like getting rid of what they first thought and moving on to something else. And so really what we want is like a description of something you're concerned about and like why it's impacting your community and why it matters to you. Like what is it about this project or this problem that like really makes you want to stand up and be a leader in your community? And it doesn't have to be a big deal. You could like get rid of grocery bags, like plastic bags at the grocery store, or you could totally change like the water laws in your county. I don't know. But a lot of these projects, I mean, we really want to leave it open to you because like, we want it to leave it open to the campers because everybody has different circumstances and backgrounds and connections and abilities and skills. And I'm not here to tell you what you need to do. What I'm here to do is like help you be the best version of yourself and give you the skills to use the passion you already have.
Individuals making collective action. It's awesome.
Exactly.
It's really awesome.
And that's really what we're trying to do is like, when you come to us and you're like, hey, I want to fix this problem. And I'm going to be like, well, who are you going to get to help you do it? And how are you going to bring them together? And what's going to motivate everybody? And how are you going to set it up? So there's a structure.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's like, we want to teach science, like behind environmental issues. And we have a lot of that, but it's also hard to pick up a lot of science in a week. Mostly we provide resources for scientific projects. Mm-hmm. And when we work on the projects for the campers, we're really giving like a lot of business skills, like how to convey your project to the public so they get on board,
message it to make the most impact,
funding,
how
to create a budget and a timeline,
really practical skills. Yeah. It's so good to be teaching this next generation of leaders, these skills. And it's awesome that you're doing it. And the reason you and I are speaking specifically right now is because you guys have a little film coming out a week from today. We're recording on Sunday, December 12th. This podcast will come out in a few days, and I think it's going to be Sunday, December 19th that the film is going to premiere. You were generous enough to share it with me today, and I watched it, and bro, it's like a goosebumps thing. Like it really conveys what I think you're hoping to achieve with this camp. Like you say in the film that like you're not an emotional guy, but that the camp sort of makes you emotional. I'm totally an emotional guy. Like I'm absolutely a crybaby. And like, I was moved by this film. So talk about the film and also I guess just meditate on what it was like to have this come together for the first time in 2021, this vision that started in 2018.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, so the film is really satisfying because it does really show what we're doing at the camp and why we're doing it and how we're doing it. Because like, I want to, like, when I talk about from Pikes Peak, I was like, well, this was good. Now we need to do a lot more of this. And so now when we have a camp, we have 10 people doing projects of about the same scale. But that's still not enough. We still need more people taking action. And so like it's really important that Footprints like tells the story and gives these resources free to the public as much as possible, so that even if you can't come to camp, you can do this stuff. Like you should be able to be like, oh, well, I have this problem in my town. And so maybe I go on the Footprints website and find all these resources and I can put together my own project. And a big part of that is just communicating this stuff well. It's creating those resources, but also like a film, that's how we tell stories in the outdoor world these days.
Yeah.
And a good film can have a huge impact. It can inspire people and it can bring people together. And the purpose of the film is to tell people what we're doing and why and how, and like be like, look, you can do this too. We want you to come to camp, but if you can't, there's other ways to do it as well. And we want you to feel capable. We also want sponsors to buy in, so that having a film helps.
Perfect segue. Shall we talk about? So, Dakota, you put up just a GoFundMe for the Footprints camp, and we should probably link to that in the show notes. We can talk about how we can get other people involved, but I just donated because you posted it on Instagram, and then you sent me a really nice note afterwards. And I didn't actually like go and look at your guys' GoFundMe. And after you sent me that email, I actually went and looked at it in detail, and it inspired me to actually do more. And, like I said at the beginning of our conversation, you've always been, I don't know, an inspiration for me. And anyway, we've sort of developed a little bit of a partnership, or Free Trail is going to be one of the sponsors of the Footprints camp in 2022. And I think there's a great alignment between what we're trying to do, right? Like, as you've mentioned, sort of being future oriented and nurturing kind of the next generation of leaders. That's very much in line kind of what we want to do specific to trail running, and, thinking of ways that we can make a difference also and support some of the great work that you're doing. It seemed like a perfect little fit. And so, we're super, super proud to be on board. You and I haven't really discussed how our contribution is going to be allocated. I don't know if we're going to be providing scholarships to kids or helping to cover expenses. But anyway, is there anything you want to talk about on this front as it pertains to Free Trail Time X Footprints collaboration?
Well, I mean, thank you. Genuinely, it's amazing. Like every little bit counts. And you're right. Like working with Free Trail is a big deal because communication is so fundamental to what we're doing here. Like you can have all the best solutions to climate change, but if you can't communicate them well and share them, then they don't really mean anything. And so working with you with Free Trail, which is actively like totally transcending barriers here for like communication. You're like making this sport seem very professional, and it's a big deal. Like, I think if you act professional, people might believe you are,
Right. Fake it till you make it.
And you're doing a good job. And so it's like this, like your communication skills obviously are great, and it can help us share the stories from the camp. But also like what you're doing here is you're trying to promote a culture within our sport that preserves what makes the sport the best for us. And this is not the kind of culture that happens accidentally. We have to actively work on preserving these things and like promoting these values and showing that like for the people who are in the sport, this is what's important. And if you want to be a part of the sport, we are too. And maybe think about these things, you don't have to, but the point is like the way you do it is really valuable. Mm-hmm. And I think it works perfectly with what we want to do with Footprints. And so as far as your sponsorship, it's kind of up to you. If you choose it to be like for our operations, like we always need
whatever, man.
Operations, that's awesome. But what we talked about before was the scholarship, because we want to make the camp accessible to people who, maybe couldn't come otherwise.
Yeah.
And so we try to give one, like ideally 2 scholarships for each camp. And that way we can reach out to communities that maybe people who like wouldn't be able to pay for it otherwise. Yeah. We work with a lot of Indigenous runners, and I try to provide these opportunities to them.
That's awesome, man. Well, yeah, I mean, you have my commitment and my contribution. You don't have it yet. You just tell me where to send a check, and I'm happy to send it. But yeah, I'm really, really happy that we can be part of it. And it's a really good thing that you're doing that brings everything that we love about our sport and culture and community, and it being bigger than about performance, right? And also having this future oriented thing and nurturing the next generation of leaders. I think it's just something that we're really going to be very proud to be a part of. And I guess talk about how other people can get involved too. I think you guys still have the GoFundMe up for people who might want to make a small contribution here around the holidays when people are in a giving mood, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, and also talk about when the premiere is going to be, if you know offhand.
Yeah. So our premiere will be next Sunday, December 19th in Salt Lake City. If you're in Salt Lake City, we would love to see you. And there will be details on where that will be, both on Footprints and my own Instagram, as well as literally anybody I know in the outdoor world who will post about it. I'm going to just spray and pray, but even if you can't make it, we're going to post the video on YouTube at the same time that we release it at the premiere. So you could come watch the film and get inspired and maybe sign up for camp. That'd be cool. And if you want to get involved, there's a lot of different ways to do that. It's very much a collaboration, and I'm often just winging it. So if you have any great ideas about how we could do things better, or you're like, hey, I have this great skill I can teach, or, whatever ideas you have, reach out. We have a contact page on our website, which is runfootprints.com. And there's also a GoFundMe page we have, but you can link to that from the front page of the Run Footprints website. I'll
link to it in the show notes too. And make sure you get me the details on the premiere so that I can talk about it in the intro outro for the episode when we release it.
Cool. I can do that. And yeah, it's going to be really fun. We get to finally show the film to the world. And I'm really hoping that it will, I don't know, for us, doing the camp finally, it was a way for us to prove the concept. This is a pretty new thing, and there was a lot. I was really uncertain about it coming into it. And when we came away from the camp, I was like, that went better than I ever could have hoped. And now we need to show the world, this is worth our time and it's worth yours. And this is a worthwhile thing going on in the sport, regardless of what role you want to play.
The film is so feel good too. It's the perfect thing to sort of pair with the Christmas season and get people inspired about doing good in the world. And especially as we all start thinking about our New Year's resolutions and things like that. And we're in a giving spirit. So I'll link to that GoFundMe so people who are interested can learn more about what you're doing and potentially contribute if they feel inspired. So, well, Dakota, it's awesome, man. It's crazy to think, back to when you kicked my ass at the Fruit of 50, whatever it was, almost 12 years ago now. And now here we are as aging trail runners trying to make a difference in the world and doing it as collaborators. It's pretty darn fun. So let's. I
hope we keep collaborating. And I feel like you'd be a great mentor at the camp someday. So
yeah, man.
If you ever want to spend 8 days, we want you.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk offline about that. But before the Footprints camp in 2022, you've got a very big thing on your plate. And so we'll finish up by talking about Hardrock here before I let you go. This is going to be a week before the Footprints camp in the San Juans, and you got pulled in the lottery. I guess it was last weekend. This is going to be the 10-year anniversary of your last finish at Hardrock when you were 21 years old. And I know Hardrock is kind of where it began for you as a trail runner. So what was it like to see your name pulled in the lottery again?
I was really excited. I feel like I've had way more luck than I deserve at the Hardrock lottery. But it's amazing. As you say, Hardrock is where I first discovered trail running and what first inspired me to be a part of this. And it's definitely been the most inspirational and important race for me ever since 2008 when I volunteered there. And so being able to run it really means a lot. And for me, I kind of feel like this is a bit of a full circle thing, because the last time I ran it, I was very much in this part of my life where I'm competition matters. That's the only thing, and ever since then I've stepped away and had all these kind of questions and some successes and some failures. And just I feel like I've gone through a lot since then. And so coming back to Hardrock definitely feels like doing what I used to do in this new way, hopefully. It's like being competitive because I like that, but also like using it as a part of this larger mission for the community. Hopefully. I mean, that's the goal at least. And so,
it's awesome, man.
Just getting around the mountains and finishing is going to be a victory for sure. But I'm definitely going to train as hard as I possibly can to do well.
You're going to have your hands full, man. Yeah. I guess to talk like a little bit more kind of on the performance side of things, we haven't talked about running that much. I mean, it's sort of been a overarching theme, but I guess to get a little bit more granular, you got to pace Francois Dane in 2021, the absolute one of the great performances in history of our sport. You had a front row seat. What'd you do? Did you do Telluride to the finish with him?
Yeah, I got to do the last 27 miles with him.
And you're going to be battling him. It sounds
we were like basically running with you. You weren't that far behind.
Dude, I was an hour behind at the finish line. I mean, I had a great race. I have no complaints, but that guy is on a different planet. What was it like to run those last 30 with Francois? Like, you had a front row seat to a historic performance.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it was like we went for a 30-mile mountain run with a bit of like intensity. I don't know. It's like, it didn't feel like that much. It didn't feel like that fast at any point. But the trick is that like he had run 70 miles.
Yeah.
by the time I started, so we were out there moving well and just like running through the mountains. And I was like, this is great. Normally when I pace, I'm just walking along for hours and hours. And like, he was cranking, but also he was very nervous. Like started in Telluride. I started with him in Telluride, and it's this monster climb up through Bridal Veil Creek and up into the Wasatch Saddle. It's like a 4,500 foot climb up to 13,000 foot. It's a bitch. Yeah. And we got up high, and there's kind of like long views, and we couldn't see you. And I was like, sweet, we're kicking butt. Dylan's back there. And then we like went over the pass, and we weren't down yet. We were only like a mile down the other side, and we saw your headlamp come over the pass. And then we came into the next aid station in Chapman. And as we were going up the other side, we saw you like in Chapman and then leaving. And then furthermore, you lose your depth perception a little bit at night. And we're like up on this pass going up to Grant Swamp, which is also this monster bitch. It's like so steep and loose.
So terrible.
And we're getting up there, and we could see your headlamps, and it looked like they were right there. And I think you were maybe a mile back or something.
No. I was way further than that. I was like 30 minutes behind at Chapman, but it was crazy for me, man, because, I ran one of the better races of my career for sure.
That was an unbelievable performance. I'm so impressed.
But it was crazy. Like at Chapman, I think I was behind by like 30 minutes, 25 or 30 minutes. And it was an hour at the finish line. I was just like, how did I lose a half hour in the final 18 miles? I was like, I wasn't moving that slow.
No,
so anyway,
not moving slow.
It was, super inspiring. And I don't know if there's anything that you maybe learned from Francois, from having that personal sort of front row seat to what was an otherworldly performance. But how are you thinking about your approach to Hardrock next year?
Francois has always struck me as just incredibly consistent. That's what he does. He's like, he just runs really, really well all the time. And he like makes a plan. He's like, I do 3 ultra trail every year, and he like doesn't do any more than that. He rests enough. He trains well, and he just has the experience. He knows how to do this, and he's just incredible.
He's so good, man.
And that's like really what I kind of want to do is, I think in the past when I was racing a lot, I would kind of take a lot of time off, like in the winter, and then build up really quick. And I seem to get hurt doing that. And really like what I want to do from here over the next 7 or 8 months before Hardrock is just be consistent. And like, how can I run 60 miles a week? Not that much. Can I run 60 miles a week for 2 months now? And then like in February or early March, like really start to ramp it up with that base, which will hopefully keep me healthier. I also want to do other things, if I run 50, 60 miles a week, plus hopefully if it ever snows, we can go Nordic skiing a lot or backcountry skiing. And I ride bikes a lot and when it's warm out. So just like trying to get that consistency, man.
Yeah, no, I think you're wise in your observation of Francois. And I think there's so much that the next generation can learn from him, not only in his consistency, but how he approaches the sport. And
he's very laid back. He's super chill.
And talk about like having things outside of just performance too. Like he's just strikes me as a very balanced person. You know, he's father of 3 and until recently had that vineyard. I want to have him on the podcast and talk about his retirement from winemaking, but
you should. Has he not?
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm going to reach out to him. Hopefully we'll have him on soon, but anyway, it's awesome that you're back in at Hardrock, man. I can't wait to watch the race. I hope to be there in person because I mean the race is going to be one for the ages if everybody shows up healthy. Have you started planning your season beyond Hardrock aside from 60 miles a week for the next couple of months? Is there any intermediary goal that you're targeting right now?
I'm trying to put that together and see like what I want to do. I definitely want to do maybe 2 races or like 1 race and like a long effort. Mm-hmm. I think I would like a long kind of like 80 to 100 mile effort several months earlier, like at a low intensity, but just like to get more practice at it. Like I haven't had a ton of experience at that distance. So I'm not sure. It's like with school, it's kind of hard. I don't know. Like part of me is like Footprints is really ramping up.
Yeah.
And like there's a lot of opportunity there and I want to race well. And I don't know. I'm like, maybe I should just take a semester off, dude. And just like train.
Didn't you learn that lesson before?
I know. That's the thing. It's like, I'm not going to go back if I do. But then I was like, but then I could go to Trans Gran Canaria. Wouldn't that be cool?
That's a race, man. You should do that.
I know you've done well there.
That would be a great, I think, stepping stone to Hardrock if you can train through the winter.
Yeah. So maybe that, I'd like to support Transvolcania again because they've had a volcano erupting for 90 days at this point. So that's in early May. It's kind of tough with finals, but probably doable. So I'll probably try to do Transvolcania and Hardrock and maybe something else.
Cool. Yeah. It'll be like 2012 Revisited, man.
Exactly. I should go around Lake Sonoma too. What about you? Are you going to run any races?
Oh man, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like I didn't get into it at Hardrock, so UTMB makes the most sense to me. I'd like to give that one more big swing before I get too old, but yeah, we'll see. I'm in the same boat, man. I was just like, I'm working 7 days a week, and really, like the thing is, man, maybe this is a perfect place to end. Is like I feel right now as inspired as I did when we met, as when I was 24 and you were 19 and all I cared about was being a runner. Like I'm so inspired by the other shit that I'm working on now that it's like, I care more about that than what my race schedule is going to be. And that's the first time in my life that it's been like that, or the first time in my career. So yeah, we'll see. I've got my hands full with so much stuff right now. I definitely still want to train and race and compete. So it's totally TBD for me right now. Luckily, UTMB is far enough in the future to where I have enough time to get ready, but I'm like barely running right now. So, but it's all good. All good.
Yeah. No, I admire that, man. I think it's really easy sometimes when you're in a sport so much, you put so much of yourself into it. Like as you start thinking about next steps, it's easy to kind of get jaded and cynical and kind of walk away from that sport.
Yeah.
And like what you've done is the exact opposite. You've like bought in and you're like, I love this sport. It's done so much for me. And like, I'm going to give it back. And I don't know, that's something that I want to try to do myself too. I like that. Beautiful,
man. Well, what a great conversation, man. Dakota, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. It's awesome to see what you're doing with your life and with your career. It's great to see you get pulled in the Hardrock lottery. I appreciate your time. I'll encourage everybody to watch the premiere of the Footprints film that's going to be coming out on Sunday the 19th. And yeah, man, hopefully we can connect in person sometime soon.
Totally. Yeah, it's been really, really good catching up. Next time, maybe we'll talk more about you and less about me.
not on my podcast, no.
That's the way these things go.
All right, bro. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, good talking to you, man.